I'm Archie O'Reilly, Dive Bomb Motorsports. Go ahead, Archie.
Hi, Rinus. So, what do you feel needs to be done next year for the team to maybe become a bit more consistent? What specific improvements do you feel need to be made to maybe get you back into a position where you could win a race or two again?
Well, I think for next season, it's going to be important to get the details right. I think we've had a really good car at times, but it's I think we just kind of missed that window too often. So I think if we can expand that window to be inside there more often, or have the target have the knowledge to be in that window, it's just going to be important. So I think we can do that. I think the team has done the right things to have that little bit more knowledge from last year. So yeah, I hope we can make the improvements that we want to make.
And what would make a successful season for you in 2024?
I mean, one thing is getting back onto a podium. I think that's well time we're back on a podium. But also, yeah, I think just kind of nibbling on that top 10 in championship is a goal.
Cheers, Dave. Thanks, Rinus.
Thank you.
Oh yeah. Let's take a couple offline. Dan Jones from Dive Bomb Motorsports. Go ahead, Dan, overseas.
Thanks, Dave. Good morning, Alexander. I hope you had a good winter period. Obviously, looking at your first season, it was a decent season, but now you've got that first season at Arrow McLaren under your belt. How can you kind of build on that? What's the expectations? Do you think winning races is achievable? Do you think matching Pato's form is achievable for you?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's hard to win races in this series, but yes, it's 100% achievable. You just have to when you have the opportunity and you have the car to do it, you got to get it done. Like that's really what it comes down to is you're not going to be the best car every single weekend, but the weekends that you are the best, like you need to figure out a way to finish it off. So that's kind of been a big team focus this offseason. As I already mentioned, for me specifically on the 7 car, like we gotta make a step in qualifying. But assuming that all goes according to plan, then yes, I think we'll definitely be much improved on how 2023 was.
Thanks, Alexander.
Archie O'Reilly, Dive Bomb Motorsports. Go ahead, Archie.
Hi, Christian. Not running the ovals this year, do you feel like that could actually help your development because you are then able to just focus on the road and street courses, and then in the future you could then develop on ovals? Or do you feel like you would rather have run an entire season this year?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the goal is always to run an entire season, but I'm very thankful for the opportunity to run the street and road and street circuits. Yeah, we'll see. I think there is a lot to learn when you step up into INDYCAR, so having to only focus on road and street circuits might be a good thing. I feel pretty strong on the ovals, so I think I could do some good stuff. But that's also the plan to continue to a full season in 2025. Yeah, for now I'll focus on the cars that I have been dealt and see where that takes me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Christian. Cheers, Dave.
Let's take a few questions offline or online, I should say. Dan Jones, Dive Bomb Motorsports. Go ahead, Dan.
Thanks, Dave. So obviously, David, a nice, exciting move for you going to Arrow McLaren. Obviously, it's a team with a few more resources than you're used to. What's sort of the biggest change you've seen moving up to Arrow McLaren so far?
Biggest change is there's a lot of people and a lot of people I need to meet, a lot of names that I'm still, need to get down. But that's been the biggest change, is just trying to get used to the different environment, something that I'm not used to. But all in all, it's been a good change, and I'm very excited to get comfortable with it.
Thanks, Dave. Best of luck for the year.
Archie O'Reilly, Dive Bomb Motorsports. Go ahead. You're with Christian Lundgaard.
Hi, Christian. Just looking at ovals, how do you feel? What specifics need to improve in order to just become better as a team on ovals, and how confident do you feel that you will crack that and become better in 2024?
Honestly, I think it all comes down to just having a fast enough car. I've questioned myself a lot in terms of if it's my performance that's lacking, or the team, or the combination of those. And honestly, I think it's a combination. The one thing I will say is, looking at where Graham is on oval results, we're basically equal. So in that sense, I at least can calm myself down on that. But honestly, I think when we look at Indy last year, we had 3 out of 4 cars in the last chance qualifying. So I think that just indicates that the car simply just wasn't fast enough. And that's something that just simply needs to be improved.
And kind of on the other side of things, what do you feel it was that made you so strong on road courses, got you the win on a street course, of course, in Toronto? So what do you feel made you so strong there, and kind of what inspired the turnaround that happened last season?
Ultimately, I think it comes down to the car being fast on road courses. We've always had a decent package there. Even the whole way back to 2021, when I did my debut, qualified 4th at the Indy road course, and all the road courses that we go to, we know that we'll be able to compete for at least a podium. So unluckily, we haven't done that enough. But that's what the 2024 season's for.
Thanks, Christian. Cheers, Dave.
Dan Jones, DIVEBOMB Motorsports. Go ahead, Dan.
Thanks, Dave. Afternoon, Tom. So first of all, with the calendar, Texas obviously isn't on there this year. So the Indy 500 will be your first oval race and your first high-speed oval race. Does your preparations change because of that at all? And does it hinder you slightly with no oval experience before?
That's a difficult one. I've thought about that because, although I haven't got an oval race under my belt before the 500, Texas was always going to be very difficult, having basically not much practice and just kind of jumping in. So now I've kind of got a bit more time. You've got a lot of practice for the 500. We've got, open days in April before we head into the full month there. So I'm not too disappointed or about that, to be honest. I think I'm going to hopefully, have ample amount of time to figure it out. That would have been nice to have that race, because race conditions change things dramatically. But hey, it's something I've got to deal with, right? But I'm not totally disappointed about that.
Cool. And just another one. Obviously, the team is stepping away from IMSA this year and focusing towards IndyCar. Do you think this is going to help in a step forward in performance? Do you think it'll benefit the team significantly this year?
I mean, honestly, I don't think it's going to change. From their perspective, they were, the teams were very separate and obviously operating, at great levels. I mean, I can hope that it obviously, brings more thing to the table. I know personally, having, worked with the guys that are coming across, I have a lot of faith and trust in them. I know what they're capable of. So yeah, hopefully. But in theory, it shouldn't really make a difference.
Cool. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Dave.
Archie O'Reilly from DIVEBOMB Motorsports. Go ahead, Archie.
Hi, Colton. Now you've had a bit of time to reflect on 2023, what do you kind of feel were the biggest shortcomings maybe for you? And how do you feel that as a team and sort of yourself, you can now improve and kind of return to race winning form in 2024?
I think it was a season of kind of what could have gone wrong did. And it was, just kind of all over the place. It was for sure probably my worst season in IndyCar, with only 2 poles and 1 podium, no win. It was the first time in my career that I haven't had a win in a year. So the goal is obviously get that back, and kind of going forward, working on the tempo through races and just having a more consistent weekend. There were some things that were definitely out of our control, and there were a lot of things that were in our control. So kind of looking back at some of those races where we had mistakes, making sure that we note those down and stuff like that doesn't happen again for sure.
Let's go to the Zoom. Archie O'Reilly, DIVEBOMB Motorsports. Go ahead, Archie.
Good to see you, Stingray. My first question is just how important do you see it as sort of as coming in as a rookie to then have a second year, to have the sophomore year to build on that? There's the first year purely for you to adapt, and then the second year you feel like you can really kick on. So yeah, how important is that second year, having that second year?
I think it's super important. I think that for myself, especially, I do better with experience. You know, I always like to quote the book, The Outliers, which talks about the 10,000 hour rule and how you have to spend 10,000 hours doing whatever it is in order to become great at it. So, I'm not anywhere near to my 10,000 hours in IndyCar yet, but I'm on my way to it. So having that rookie season out of the way and having some time off to kind of digest everything from the season and really focus on the areas I need to work on, I think it's good. And I think that it'll allow me to go into the weekends, not just from a learning aspect. It'll allow me to go, okay, I already know what the deal is here at this track at this time and the tendencies with the team and whatever. So like you said, I'm not adapting during the weekend as much as I'm preparing, which it makes a big difference.
And I'm not sure if you've answered this before, but do you see this as a multi-year sort of thing with Foyt, or is it a case of kind of seeing how the first year goes and then kind of going from there?
I think it very well could be. I mean, with their results at the Indy 500 last year, I think that we're all hopeful for what the team's capable of doing. And like I said, with the alignment, I think that both teams are going to have a lot to learn. And hopefully that'll benefit both, and it'll allow me an opportunity to learn and progress and have some success with the team.
Thanks, Stingray. Cheers, Dave.
Dan Jones, DIVEBOMB Motorsports. Hi, Dan. You're on mute.
Sorry, Dave. Thank you very much. Afternoon, Pietro. Hope you've had a good content day. Last 5 years or so, you've obviously bounced around quite a lot of different series. You've done loads of different things. Do you sort of see your long-term future in IndyCar, or is there something you want to be doing for the next few years of your career?
Absolutely. I've always wanted to do it. It was just a matter of opportunity. And sometimes, I think from the outside, it's easy to be like, I think this driver has to do this and then do this full time. And the racing world, doesn't work like that. There's a lot of variables that are in place to be able to have a driver racing, and at times you just have to take whatever opportunity is given to you. And that's kind of how it was the past few years. And even racing in WEC this past season with Team Jota, we were, very strong over there. We won a race at Monza. We basically led every practice and qualifying session in Le Mans. And it was going really well in the World Endurance Championship. And I had opportunities to do LMDH for this coming season, which would be amazing because WEC, and IMSA together, they're growing so much in popularity. But when the IndyCar opportunity came by, I was like, I've always wanted to do this, and I gotta go for it.
And just another question. Obviously, the team had quite a decent year in some aspects last year. Christian obviously got the win in Toronto, and you had a few poles between the team. Do you think personally you can reach those ambitions next year? Do you think poles and wins are potentially something on the cards for you?
For sure. I think you have to believe it, and the team has shown tremendous pace, especially on the road courses and, towards middle to the end of the season. The work that they're putting into it. But we know how competitive the IndyCar season is. I mean, every driver on the grid basically can win the race. And with the amount of strategy that's into an IndyCar race, it gets so complicated at times. So sometimes you're the fastest driver and at the time with the best strategy, and then you still end up not winning the race. So that's how crazy it can get. But I think we have to take it, race weekend by race weekend, maximize each and every session, and then the results will come.
Thanks, Pietro. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks.
Archie Riley is coming from DIVEBOMB Motorsports overseas. Go ahead, Archie.
Hi, Kyffin. What are your targets going into this year realistically? Is it more about kind of adapting and developing on your side with any headline results maybe secondary to that?
Yeah, I think this year is going to be a lot about learning. I don't really have any set targets that I have for myself. I just want to maximize everything that I can. So if I've got a car for 5th, I want to get 5th. If I only have a car for 10th, I'll take 10th or anything like that. So I just want to make sure that I maximize every session, not just learning everything I can, but also putting the car where it should be.
And was the plan always to make this step up to IndyCar in 2024? When did you kind of find out that was what you were going to do? When was that decided?
I can't remember exactly when, but I believe it was just after the season ended that I got confirmation about it. Just after Laguna.
Okay, thank you very much, Kyffin. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks,
Archie. Gracias. We'll take one Spanish, or rather English, before we wrap it up, unless you know Spanish. Dan Jones from DIVEBOMB Motorsports. Go ahead, Dan.
I wish, Dave. I'm not quite that talented yet. Maybe in a few years. Agustin, just for you, how do you feel about the series potentially racing in Argentina, whether that's next year or in the next few years? Do you think it'd be good for growth in your home country? Do you think it's something that you'd like to see happen?
Yes, definitely. Yes, definitely. And I think it will be amazing for the series, because I promise you, if the series come to Argentina, we will have an amazing event, because the fans there are really excited with this situation with me here. And it's a wish, it's a dream, but I have confidence maybe sometime, I don't know, next year or the other, but I have confidence sometimes we will have INDYCAR in Argentina.
Cool. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Agustin. I'll practice my Spanish for this time next year.
Okay. Thank you.
You've got a year. And if your Spanish is as good as Augustin's English in a year, then that'll be a good story.
I'll try to surprise you.
We'll wrap it up with Agustin. We've got about 5 minutes remaining. Let's take a few off Zoom. Archie O'Reilly from DIVEBOMB Motorsports. Hey, Archie.
Hi, Kyle. I think my first question is just, I think I'm right in saying your 2 wins, you were your only top fives last season. How do you feel you can, I know you were forced into some recovery drives from early incidents and what have you, but how do you feel you can maybe become more consistently up there?
Thanks for asking. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a goal of mine. I look at that. I look at it. I see that my 2 top fives are first place finishes. I mean, that's not the ultimate. That's not what I try to do, of course. But I mean, it really is just kind of, I think it's really experience for me. Understanding some strategy stuff like that. I feel like I'm figuring out now. There's a lot of factors that came into play last year that kind of kept us out of top 5 contentions in various different times. It wasn't just one single thing. So I think it's just circumstantial that we only had 2 top 5s and both of those were wins. That's just circumstance, really. But I mean, the goal is next year to have consistent finishes. Obviously, that's what you need to do well in a championship, is to always be in the top 5. I mean, look at Pillow. He was first a lot of times, but he was in the top 5 for like every other time. So I mean, that is a main goal of mine, and obviously that comes with, I think, experience mostly, and kind of understanding of how the races go and when to push, when not to push, when to save fuel, when not to save fuel, kind of just the cadence of everything. So that's something that I've been focusing on and trying to get down for this coming year.
Yeah, and I think more broadly, what are your biggest takeaways from last year, which was essentially your first year with kind of a race-winning team, a pole contending team? So what were your biggest takeaways from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway is how easy it is when you're at the front. You'd expect it to be hard from the front. And it's no different than fighting for 10th. I came to realize it's when you're already at the front, you're kind of controlling the race, which is something that I was comfortable in, I guess, when I was in my lower categories, was being at the front. So maybe I find comfort in that. But I find that like everything leading up to the race matters so much more than someone might expect. Like practices, qualifying, all that stuff, making sure you nail it through an entire weekend is absolutely crucial. You can't just show up on race day and expect to go out there and win a race. That's not the case. You got to show up from the time you get to the track on Thursday.
Thanks a lot, Kyle. Thanks.
Dan Jones, DIVEBOMB Motorsports. Go ahead.
Thanks, Dave. Afternoon, Linus. Obviously, evening over here and the rest of Europe. You mentioned on being on the sidelines last year was a bit frustrating and waiting for that opportunity. Was there any doubt in your mind that opportunity wouldn't come for you? Were you always confident that something would eventually happen?
Oh no, I had serious doubts for long periods of time, but I also said to myself that I wasn't really ready to give up, and that was a conscious decision that I made as well. Like I wasn't going to sit back home in my couch and watch all the races. I was going to be at every single race, make sure that I'm at the top of people's minds. And like I said many times earlier, but almost hassling these team principals and bosses into meeting me and not forgetting me. And I'd like to say that it paid off.
And obviously, you did those 3 races towards the end of last year, subbing in for Simon Pagenaud at Meyer Shank. How much did you learn from those 3 races? Obviously, you did it on 3 different types of track as well. Do you think that puts you in good stead going into this year? Do you think it gives you a slight head start compared to what you would be otherwise?
Oh, 100%. Obviously, I've done 3 more races than I would have done before, but not only the races themselves, because they're fairly straightforward, I'd say, but the whole IndyCar weekend concept, what I need to get in the right zone, to be as efficient as possible, how the practices and qualifying works. I mean, we basically just cut everything a little bit smoother, I would say, by doing the 3 races. And like you mentioned, to be able to do like a street course, road course, and an oval as well, that was just like the cherry on top. But I also know that it's going to be a huge challenge going into next year. But that's what I feel so great about being part of this team, that I know they're going to guide me through it.
And just finally, on those 3 races, you obviously impressed quite a lot of us with your performances in them. Did you feel that gave you a real boost in your efforts to get a seat this year? And when did you sort of get an indication that getting a full-time ride was a possibility for you?
Yeah, I'd say it was essential. Without those races, I would not be sitting here today. I don't think so, at least, because obviously I was doing my best to even be in some contention during the year about talking for 2024. But yeah, after it was basically that Nashville race, everything kind of changed for me. And when Chip called sometime after that and said that we can make this happen, it was a no-brainer. I mean, it's a dream of every driver to be able to race for this team. And yeah, I'm trying to make it one better by winning for this team.
Yeah, best of luck for the season. Thanks, Linus. Thanks, Dave.
Couple questions off of Zoom. Let's go to Archie O'Reilly from DIVEBOMB Motorsports. Archie.
Hi, Rossi. Heading into this year, how important is it for you? I know you ultimately didn't finish the race, but how important is it that you managed to get some race laps under your belt at the 500, and how much of a boost do you think that will be this year, heading into this year?
I think it'll be, it's every time you do, it's like anything else. And every time you do it, it's just going to keep getting easier every time you keep doing it. And, I mean, the first time around, that's when you're the most nervous. That's when, you're going to make the small mistakes. And, when you come back the next year, you know exactly what you're supposed to expect. And like I said, I think the biggest learning curve, especially in race mode, was just running in traffic. I mean, I talked to a couple of the drivers because I was like, I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing, but they're like, oh no, you're doing the right things. Just it's really difficult to pass. And I was like, well, okay, at least I'm headed in the right direction. And all the tools you have, it's just it's a lot to take on. And now, like, the more I did it, once I got to the race, it was finally the point I got comfortable running in traffic and being ahead on my tools and kind of knowing where I need to place the car. It took a bit to get there.
And heading away from the 500, is a full-time IndyCar opportunity something you would be keen to try and pursue?
I think everybody would be pretty keen on trying it, but yeah, that's the goal. I mean, I think this year, that's the problem with trying to be full-time, is you got to plan it so far in advance. It's not like something you could do a month before a season starts. It's got to be in the works almost a year prior. So goal would be to run the 500 this year. And then look forward to 2025 and seeing what the possibilities are.
Thanks a lot, guys.